In today's program, I'm joined by Monkey from Monkey Werx. Incredible opportunity for an urgent conversation about the threats that we are seeing, the direction things appear to be headed, and why Bible prophecy continues to give us clarity in a world filled with confusion. Listen, the world is changing, as we know, right before our eyes, and the headlines are becoming harder and harder to ignore. And many people are asking what comes next and how close we may be to major prophetic developments. Folks, this is a serious conversation. Please welcome Monkey. Monkey Werx is in the house. Well, not totally in the house, but you're right there. Man, good to see you.
You as well, man. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited about today's show and what we're going to talk about because, man, I tell you what, the world is changing rapidly right before our very eyes. And what a time to be alive.
Oh, man, no kidding. By the way, you look really good, just so you know. So,
oh, thanks.
Okay, so I don't know if I told you this, but I was in Sacramento just recently. You have a very large fan base in Sacramento, I found out. I was speaking up there at a conference. And it was big. I was like, wow, it's like everybody up here watches Monkey. So that was kind of cool. There are people in California that love what you're doing. And but thank you so much. Been great knowing you and being a friend. And we have a lot to talk about. And so,
yeah, we really do.
So first of all, what I want to do is get an update for anybody who's not yet familiar with you. They can follow you at your channel, Monkey Werx. Monkeywerx.com, monkeywerxus.com, or monkeywerxus.com, however you want to say it.
Yeah. And so, over on my website, you can go and read. I've got a lot of blogs out there. A lot of it has to do with our agencies and what the antics that they have been up to over the years. And then some other little looks at, economic stuff and how tariffs actually play out because there's a misnomer that, that tariffs are good for us and the government's making all this money. But the reality is we, the consumer, are actually paying a hidden consumption tax. And so I do a lot of blogs like that, but then also my YouTube channel, and then you can find me over on Patreon. But I've just been covering, and what I always do is just the geopolitics, what's happening in our skies, because those absolutely tell stories. And I align it all with what's going on biblically in the world.
Yeah, well, yeah, you do. You do an outstanding job. And you got over 30 years of experience in aerospace and defense. You've worked on some things that I know you don't like to talk about, DARPA and so forth. But so just real quick, this to bring everybody into the same house. For viewers that might not be familiar with your background, how did you first get involved in aerospace and defense, and then how did that develop to where we are now, and all of the things you track? And then I'm going to start asking you what you see coming, because it is crazy.
Well, I joined the Air Force back in '87, so I'm a former service member. Spent 4 years in the Air Force. And then from there, I went to work for one of the commercial airlines, a very large one. And, I left that industry just because I wanted to diversify. I had an opportunity to go over to aerospace and defense. And then I spent most of my career over there on that side of the house working supply chain solutions for the F-35 program. And, my background, I'm a Lean Six Sigma by trade. And so I'm trained to notice things that stand out from a rhythm and tempo aspect, looking at moving assembly lines and material flows and things like that. And to kind of pick up on what just stands out that shouldn't be there. And so I got started doing this. I just got fed up with working for a defense contractor that was what I felt was not really a good Christian life for myself. I got saved in 2014, and I started to really look closely at what I was doing and the people that were around me and what the company stood for. And I thought, this is not for me. And I honestly, I jumped ship making a pretty fair salary, and I had no landing. And I thought, you know what? God's going to put me where he wants me, and I'm not going to worry about it. And so just through faith and obedience, I just stepped out, knowing that he's going to do what he needs to do with me in my life. And he did. He answered that call, as he always does. I put my first video out, I think, in around 2019 on YouTube, and it went viral. And I went from 0 to 400,000 followers in about 60 days. And that's how I knew. I'm like, okay, this is what God wants me to do. And that is where it's just been continuing to head that same direction. I do what I think God wants me to talk about and do in my everyday life. I put him before all things. And, that's where I am. So this is me.
Amen. That's great. And it's been great just to get to know you as a friend, as a brother, and also someone to be able to just do these things with too.
Yeah.
So we're going to, folks, just so you know, we're going to get into the real threat of terror cells and also the Abraham Accords. Some of you might be surprised to hear this, but you're going to find out that Monkey and I are pretty much in agreement where these things are both going and why we see certain things happening, much to the chagrin of other people that are out there all over the place. So we're going to be going down these areas. What's going to happen? What's going to happen, let's say the day after Trump says Iran is done. All right, so we'll get there in a few more minutes. But let me ask you this, from a military standpoint, what phase of the conflict of the war are we in right now? Or, I mean, I don't even know if it's even been declared a war, but I mean, from my perspective, looks like a war to me.
That's a key word there. And let me tell you, that is a trigger word because technically, Congress is the only ones that can declare war. And so you hear Pistol Pete talking about Operation Epic Fury, dude. And, there's a reason they call it an operation, not a war. But then you hear mixed signals coming out of the White House, some calling it war, some calling it operation. But there's a reason for that. You can't really declare war without Congress. And so Trump has kind of stepped out a couple times in making that comment that will probably end up getting a little bit of heat from him downstream once the dust settles. But militarily wise, and this is something that you and I were talking about, was that I started watching a significant uptick in C-17 traffic back in October of last year. That tells me that Trump had already started hedging on this entire outcome long before we saw any of this start to happen. October, more than likely, when the flights that were going in C-17s, which are Globemasters, they're a heavy lift, long haul logistics bird. When those aircraft start entering the theater, what they're typically bringing over are missile defense type of items, right? All the accoutrement that goes with it, radar systems and support packages, et cetera, missiles. Okay. That is what I saw starting in October. And that flow stayed heavy all the way up until probably just around Christmas time. And then it went exponentially high. So this right here, I think, is a foregone conclusion that I believe that the end state for all of this is a peace deal. Mm-hmm. I think Trump knows there's not a chance of him getting a peace deal in the Middle East unless he gets Iran basically neutered. And you have to take out the regime. You have to take out their missiles. You have to take out, their nuclear ambitions, all of it. He knows that's the only way he's going to get this peace deal inked.
Okay, so let's build on this, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the tracking that you do, so everybody can really connect with all that you do if they don't already go there, which I'm pretty sure most of our viewers already do. But anybody that might be new, they'll get it. Okay, so with this, I look at certain Bible passages, and I have colleagues that totally disagree with me. I've almost been called a heretic for some of them. And I think it's ridiculous to sit here and argue over too many of them, but Jeremiah chapter 49 would be one of those passages that I clearly see maybe some things have happened in the past, but when I read Jeremiah chapter 49, I don't see these things as being fulfilled yet. The destruction that's going to come to Elam. And people say, well, Elam isn't Persia. Well, if you look at Iran, Iran contained Persia and Elam. If you look at a map, if you go back 2,500 years. So both of those were located, one, I think, in the south side and Persia on the other side, but both in modern day Iran. But regardless of that, what that passage does talk about the breaking the bow of Elam. And I do want to say this, as we look at the heading towards a peace plan in the Middle East, I full-heartedly want to come back to that, because that is where this is going. It has to go that way. There's going to be different motives for everything that is happening. But, I voted for Trump, but I still think, let me be honest, the guy's got a big ego, in case nobody's ever noticed it before. He's a megalomaniac, and he wants that peace plan. And prior to him coming into office, I repeatedly said, day one, when he gets into office after he was elected, I said, he's going to start pushing the Abraham Accords. I think when this is said and done, when Trump's able to declare we're done, we will see the Abraham Accords, a peace plan, like in hyperspeed. I see that going that direction. But nevertheless, Jeremiah 49, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, people can say all of those are past, but I look and go, well, the same people groups, the same territories that are involved in all three of those prophecies happen to be in play right now. So I see it going forward. You've talked a little bit about this on Jeremiah 49. What's your take, the breaking of the bow of Elam, and where you think Trump is going?
Yeah, well, just listen to the messaging that's coming out by both Israel and the United States. And it's almost textbook of what the Bible actually says, right? It talks about we're going to wipe out the regime, right? We're going to take away all of their missiles, and we're going to take away their nuclear ambitions. And then you start to watch as the bombs drop, people are starting to scatter to the wind. I mean, you can't stay in Tehran, which is ancient Persia. Okay, you can't stay there because for two reasons. One, the sky is filled with black smoke, right? It's toxic environment. The other piece too is, don't forget, they have already had a water crisis to the point where they were telling people in Tehran, 12 million people, you're going to have to find another place to live because we don't have any water. So you can't live without water, especially in a desert, right? So, but yeah, I do believe that the messaging that we're hearing from both Israel and the United States is almost aligned to the word for what it says will occur. Has it all occurred yet? I don't think it has. Has some of it occurred in the past? Yeah, I think so. But the Bible is like that throughout, right? I mean, you go to the book of Joel, and there's parts of it that have already happened previously, and there's parts that are going to happen in the future. So there's a lot of that throughout the Bible, and it's all happening on God's timing. So I do believe that we will, at the end of the day, see Jeremiah 49 fulfilled. I think we'll see that in our lifetime. And how long that lifetime is, I guess that's the golden question, right? But yeah, I think that's what we're witnessing unfold. And yeah, there's people that think that this is, we're heretics, whatever. I'm just matching what we see unfolding with what the Bible tells us will unfold. And that's just how I see it. You see it the same way, I believe. And I think there's a lot of others that see it that same way too.
Yeah, it's very fascinating when you look at it. And then going back to the Abraham Accords or peace plan, you have Jared Kushner involved. We have Witkoff involved. Trump has said, hey, I'm not doing anything with this without Jared Kushner leading, which is rather interesting to me.
Yes.
But we can see this going this way, and that is also something that the Bible lets us know is coming. And I do want to preface it with this. It doesn't necessarily mean that what's coming with Kushner and Trump is the Daniel chapter 9 covenant. In fact, I think that is something different. I think it's laid out more clearly in Isaiah 28 what the Daniel 9 covenant is. But nevertheless, the Mideast has to still get to peace and safety. Israel has to be in that place of peace with the laying down of weapons and not having Iran as a threat,
Yeah.
it has to get there with their neighbors. And
Yeah.
then the Trump, the whole Abraham Accords, it involves, the intent is to involve all of the Gulf states, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, just take a look at how it started out. It was this Gaza peace plan, and he showed up, and he had all these countries in the region buying in on supporting that peace plan. And when I say that, well, the next step was the board of peace, and then the buying in was literal. Like, what did he say? He needed $12 billion from everybody, every country, to stand this thing up and to execute it. And then, so you've got the board of peace, which I think all of this is going to transition into that Abraham Accord. And there was something that happened, and you may remember it was the prince of Saudi Arabia and Bibi Netanyahu. Before the October 7th attack took place, there was a meeting that took place with them, and they were going to make it official. Something was about to be made official between those two countries, and then the October 7th stuff took shape, and then that all got just kind of, hushed out. But I think that there's already been agreements signed between the countries, et cetera, and I think that agreement may end up being what allows them to build on the Temple Mount, because the Prince of Saudi is the guy that holds all the purse strings for, all of the Muslim holy sites, so to speak. So if he says, you don't worship on the Temple Mount, or he says, everything's going to be Mecca, Medina, then he makes that, edict. So I do think that is, to your point, that is where all of this is headed, back to the Abraham Accords. The very first thing that Trump started to present in his first term, I think is going to come back in to play here shortly after all of this is said and done.
So check this out. On one of my trips to Israel, we're at the city of David, and we're making our way up towards like the area of the Western Wall. And I'm with a couple of people with me that are real estate brokers. And somehow they start talking about real estate in Jerusalem, and we're staring at the Temple Mount. And I said, well, just think, whoever can make a deal for that piece of real estate right up there will become the king of the world. So you look at it, and because it's like you can't really put a price tag on it, but is it going to go that way before Antichrist confirms the coming of Daniel chapter 9? Is it Saudi Arabia? All we know is that there is going to be a temple that's going to be built there. We don't know the date it's going to start. And the talk is definitely increasing regarding the Temple Mount. And it was, I think it was MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, who says, look, we know that is really a Jewish holy site. And he's definitely had some people in Saudi Arabia that have spoken out and said, the Quran doesn't say anything about that site. So we know that's there. Hitler's guy, remember the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem? He became the guy who trained Hitler's troops to go after the Jews. I have a book that he was part of the editing team back in 1927 or 25, I think it was. I actually have it in my office, where he says that's the place of Solomon's temple. And yet he's out, making sure Jews are killed. But he actually said it. So the word is out there. Somebody who looks at Islam seriously is going to know, okay, that's what the Jews have. So when you start looking at peace that's coming, I'm looking at this, and was it also Saudi Arabia that said they want to be the biggest money influencer in Gaza? It was either them, or it was either out of Saudi or the UAE. It was just about a week or so ago. They want to have the most money in. In other words, we want to have the most control on what we say is going to happen. And again, as you said, going back just a few days prior to October 7, Netanyahu and MBS had this meeting. Hey, this money is going to be pouring in. We're going to make deals with all of our neighbors. We're going to have peace. And then a few days later comes October 7th. So you look at this, go, I think a lot of people forgot what happened 2.5 years ago and the direction that this was going.
Yeah, and I will tell you that you start to look at the world around Israel. You look at the fact that they very quietly started building a 400-kilometer fence between Israel and Jordan. That was they announced that about 3 or 4 months ago. So there's a lot of things you can see them starting to kind of posture. You can see what's happening with Gaza, and does that create that the country without fences and borders. Well, I guess they'll always have a country border, but unwalled villages, as
Unwalled
Ezekiel 38 talks about.
Yeah.
Right, that's the condition that has to be there for Ezekiel 38, and so we know they get there somehow. But yeah, I mean, you think about, and to your point, the Temple Mount. It's like 35 acres of the most contentious land on the planet. And it's all going to come back to that very spot, which is, you get your head around that. And you look how big the world is down to a little 35-acre plot. That's pretty astounding to think about it,
Yeah. Just as God said it would. It is the epicenter. It's like in Zechariah chapter 12, God says, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness for all the surrounding people. In fact, it's correct that it would actually means I will make Jerusalem an intoxicating drink, and the enemies of Israel will be staggering because of it. And it's like you look at the leaders of the world, whether it's the West or whether it's the Islamic countries, doesn't matter where they are, whether it's Turkey, whether it's Russia, whether it's China, the world seems to be intoxicated with Israel. All over social media, and then zeroing in on the Temple Mount. So when I look at this, the Abraham Accords, what do you think the significance is of these? With Iran, they fired missiles. They've had drones. A drone attack it was the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So we've seen these different things, and you start looking at the neighbors that Trump wants to make sure are in peace with the Abraham Accords. You go, well, it's just fascinating to me. But
Same people.
You also have the Sunni Shiite thing, which is a big deal. They do not like each other. So we have all of these things going on, but ultimately God is sovereign, and he uses men to direct things where he decides it's going to go.
Oh yeah. Isaiah 55:11. That's what it basically says, that very thing, right? It's that all his word goes forth and doesn't return void. That all things go according to his will. That's what we're seeing happen. So yeah, he uses men. He uses all the tools that he created, right? So, but yeah, you look at what Iran is doing, and I've been saying this for several podcasts now, and that is, they are fighting a completely different war. They're not fighting what we would see as a military conflict in the way that most countries would have a strategy, right? Eliminate your enemy. They are, but they aren't, right? Their entire approach is economic. The United States is trying to, remove a regime, take out a nuclear ambition, get rid of all their weapons, where Iran is basically using very low-end, low-cost drones and missiles, et cetera, to fight and take out the economic balance within the region. And so in doing that, today, like I just recorded a show for my next show that's going to be talking about the fact that, Iran is putting mines in the strait. As soon as they do that, that strait is shut down. There's nothing passing through the strait. And when that happens, the flow of oil, right? You have production facilities within the region that pump out oil. They take it to, down to the Persian Gulf, and then it goes passing through. 20% of the world's oil passes through that strait. Well, as soon as you shut down the strait, you shut down the flow of oil, and then people start to burn down and consume the oil that they have on hand. And that's where we're starting to see. And there's three things that actually take place that lead up to a major war and have historically. And one of them is shutting down, when you shut down the flow of oil, you'll see major price spikes that start to take shape. You'll see 20, 30% gains over a weekend in oil, which we just saw that happen last weekend, where oil prices reached 119 plus a barrel, which is very high, considering that in December, early December, we were at about $56, $58 a barrel.
Double.
Which is, it's 2x, right? But then you start to see the insurance companies will stop covering the passing of ships through the strait because it is it's just too expensive. Normally they charge like 1% or 0.5 to 1% of whatever the oil is that's passing through on the ship, right? So it's there's a buy-in, you get the coverage that while you're transferring the oil, and it just is absorbed into the price. But when you start to have a war environment, those can be anywhere from 1% to 3%. Now you're talking about, millions of dollars in insurance cost. And ship captains and companies that move this oil, they can't absorb that and still make a profit. So they just park the ships. And we've been watching all of this stagnation happen on both sides of the strait, where the ships are just sitting, nothing's moving. And then when they say they're moving, the reality is that they're being spoofed. There's really nothing moving through the strait. In fact, the White House just got caught out because the Secretary of Energy made a comment that the U.S. Navy just escorted a ship through the strait, and that never happened. And so he quickly retracted it, because what happens now is the oil, the buyers that are buying futures of Brent crude, they start to go, oh, wait a second. They change. You saw oil drop $10 a barrel just off of him making that comment. That's actually illegal to do. And so we're seeing that happen throughout the administration, where Pistol Pete is making a comment that, hey, we're ramping up on the war, and Trump's making a comment that we're days away from being done and complete, though. It's not happening. And the reason for that is because, look, you can't do what you just did in the Middle East to Iran, who is the biggest terrorist sponsor on the planet, and not complete the job. Because now you've just incentivized every terrorist around the world to attack you. And so I think that is where we're going to start to see things happen here in the United States, that I think, and we're already starting to see some of those indicators where people are standing up on airplanes and yelling, Aloha snack bar. They are, threatening, airlines, and you're finding airports shutting down and clearing people out because of suspected packages. They're making homemade bombs and throwing them on the street to crowds that are protesting. We're seeing people go into bars as lone wolves and shoot up places like what just happened in Austin. And so I think that is the direction a lot of this is probably going to head. And I don't know that you'll ever get that cleaned up, because you talk about the Shiites. If you look at how many Muslims are in the United States, there are roughly 4.5 million Muslims inside the United States. About 20%, I believe that was the number of them, are actually Shiite Muslims. And a large population of them live up in Minnesota and Detroit and that area. But they're here in Texas. You got 330 mosques in the state of Texas now. And so, but of the amount of Muslims, there's probably 15% of global Muslims are considered extremists. That's a pretty high number. And when you've had very porous borders here in the United States, look at Afghanistan. We brought, 120,000 Afghanis over and let them into our country, rehomed them, gave them, money and jobs and all the other stuff. There are absolutely bad actors hidden inside that, and all we've done is just basically lit the fuse on a powder keg. I believe that is probably on the near horizon.
And unfortunately, in the sense, the problem has to be dealt with. But when you have these terror cells all over here, and from what I understand with the terror cells, they don't necessarily communicate with each other. So if they're caught over here, they aren't able to rat out these people over here. there's certain types of, or everything's done in code, so they might not know this person's name, so they give them a name and it doesn't match any database or anything. So busting one terror group doesn't lead to busting 10 more terror groups. When you're dealing with drug dealers, they all know each other, and then they start ratting out each other. But it's a different dynamic how they are trained within the Islamic terror group world from what I look at and know. And yet, at the same time, I don't think it's too far into the future when Trump is going to declare mission accomplished in Iran. But this is what I also believe: whenever that is declared, there's no way they're going to get rid of all of the sympathizers to the regime. They're not going to get rid of all the IRGC members. They're not going to. And so they're still going to be there, which leads to a comeback with Russia in the future too. But I do think Trump's, how long is he going to be able to extend this before he's going to have to declare mission accomplished? What kind of bombs are going to still have to be dropped? Breaking the bow of Elam, completely doing that. You look and go, okay, it's an interesting dynamic, and what's going to trigger all these terror cells here? And I think from what I see now, like these people throwing like pipe bombs and stuff, a lot of it looks like it's like a lone wolf kind of thing. But the organized part of the terror cell groups looks to me like that's something we need to be highly prepared for.
Yeah, and I don't know that they are. I think so. We go back to tracking flights, and I watch all of the intel flights that happen over the United States. I look at the drone flights. I look at the military intel balloons, and I will tell you, last July, just after we annihilated their nuclear ambition for the first time, the amount of intel flights that I saw before July 4th over our country was staggering. And I'm starting to see the same thing now where we are, I think, scrambling to try to find people. The problem you're running into is DHS is not funded. And so they say, well, we not much we can do. If you go to the DHS site, there's no live updates because they don't have any money to run, that side of the house. So how do you actively work to stop bad actors if you don't have the funding to do so? And again, maybe that's just the way things are supposed to happen. I don't know that we're going to ever rat them all out and get them all ever. Our border's been too porous for too many years God knows who has come across that border. There were people, you may remember, there were some people that were being interviewed at the border that made Middle Eastern men that made comments like, you will find out who I am soon enough. Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Oh, I remember that. That was, about 3 years ago, we were seeing all kinds of the videos like that were coming out. Tons of them. Yeah. Coming across the southern border.
Yep. And, and again, but you look at the economy, you look at how things are starting to shake loose. The price of oil has a direct, impact to our gasoline prices, our supply costs, because it costs more for freight, because there's more fuel. It costs more to fly because airlines have to pay more for fuel. Packaging. So many things are tied into a petroleum product. Everything. So you're not just getting whammied on actual the product itself. You're getting whammied on the packaging that goes into it, the transportation that's tied to it. And so if this goes on for a prolonged period of time, the economic ramifications, not just for the United States, but the rest of the world, are going to be absolutely like nothing I don't think we've ever seen, because a lot of countries already, you look at the UK, you look at Germany, they already have been in a recession. They haven't really emerged out of that recession. And so the U.S. has been, I think personally, all the things if you go back and look at the Biden regime and the fact that they were coming back and revising very quietly the jobs numbers downward to the point that we were I forget how many millions, down after he exited office, of jobs that we claimed were there that weren't really there. We just had a negative month of 90 for January. They revised it down to 96, 98,000 negative for a jobs market. That tells you that things are not, the housing's not going gangbusters. There's just a lot of things here. We're already kind of in an environment where all of a sudden you start to throw in $7 gasoline, and people are already living paycheck to paycheck. You are putting the squeeze and hurting on a lot of people. Then credit markets start to tank. There's just, this thing could cascade in a very bad way very quickly without any type of internal attack at all. Right? I mean, you throw that on top of what conditions may be happening on the near horizon, and yeah, this could be a pretty bad situation all the way around.
That was an incredible time with Monkey from Monkey Werx. He's going to be coming back. We'll pick up there from where we just left off. But listen, folks, we got to remember, what did Jesus say? Luke chapter 21, verse 28. When you see these things begin to take place, what do? You look up and lift up your head because your redemption draws near. When you see what things? Everything converging at the same time regarding the signs of Bible prophecy, including the nation of Israel being back in the land again, the people being back in the land, the wars and rumors of wars, lawlessness abounding, the threats of economic collapse, all these things we talked about. God bless you guys. Can't wait to have Monkey back as we pick up from where we just left off.